The thing is, I did not think I was destroying my marriage. I thought I was asking for proof, real proof, the kind a woman can see in a room full of people. One party, one laugh, one hand on me, while my husband stood 3 steps away. By the time I understood what I had made public, my private life was already gone. My name is Sloane Mercer. I was 34, and I worked as a senior crisis communications strategist. I saw myself as the woman who could walk into any room, find the weak spot, and make the first story sound like the real one. The thing is, I thought that made me strong. Proof mattered to me. Real proof. Not quiet favours, not steady hands, not coffee brought home on cold mornings. Nikolai was my husband, and for 7 years he had loved me in ways I used to keep in drawers. Every Sunday he bought coffee from the bakery near our apartment and wrote the weather on the paper sleeve because I once said, ordinary days disappeared too fast. Rain, 48 degrees. Wind from the east. Clear morning, blue sky. I kept those sleeves beside old birthday cards. That spring evening, we were in the apartment courtyard after a small neighbour gathering. The string lights kept flickering over the brick wall, and the air smelled like wet soil from the planters. I was holding a plastic cup and making people laugh about a client who had tried to solve a scandal with one bad apology email. Nikolai stood beside the fence, fixing a loose light without telling anyone he had done it. A delivery driver argued with a man at the gate. The man got loud. I watched Nikolai watch him. 1 shout, 2 steps. No movement from my husband. He waited, listened, and said something calm that made the driver leave with his shoulders down. Everyone acted like that was good. I did not. Later, Nikolai asked what had changed between us. He asked it softly while folding the blanket from the courtyard bench. He said I had looked at him like he had failed some test he did not know he was taking. I told him nothing had changed. I said he was always turning small things into careful talks. He accepted that, because that was one of his flaws. He believed silence meant peace if no one raised their voice. Daria, my college roommate, arrived late and told me I was too alive for people who treated life like a maintenance schedule. She smiled at Nikolai when she said it, but not kindly. Then Elias came through the gate. He was Nikolai's best friend from university, loud and broad and sure of his own space. He clapped Nikolai on the shoulder, then turned to me like I was the brightest thing there. I heard Elias laugh from the hallway before I noticed my husband reaching for my coat. 2 weeks later, I was at the agency, standing inside a glass conference room while a client tried to explain why a private video of him insulting his staff was not as bad as it looked. The room smelled like dry markers and burnt coffee. I told him that public damage was about speed, not fairness. Whoever gave people the first clean version usually owned the room. I believed that. I still do in a smaller, uglier way. The thing is, I had built a career on proof. Real proof. Screenshots, dates, timelines, who saw what, who said what first. I taught clients how to make one moment look like a misunderstanding and one pattern look like one bad day. That afternoon, Elias texted me after the client meeting. He said Nikolai had mentioned I was under pressure and that I should come by his sports club lounge if I needed to be around people who did not treat stress like a math problem. I read that twice in the elevator. 1 message, 2 floors. No reply from me until the garage. Nikolai called as I reached my car. He asked if I was still coming home for dinner. His voice had that even weight he used when he was tired but trying not to sound tired. I could hear water running behind him. He was probably washing rice because he always started dinner with the part that took longest. I told him I had a late client review. That was the first active lie. Not the first small omission, not the first stretched hour, not the first message I left unanswered until morning. This one had a door. I saw it, opened it, and stepped through. The sports club lounge had dark wood, leather chairs, and men who spoke like the city was built for them. Ilias was already at a corner table. He stood when I arrived, which Nikolai rarely did, because Nikolai thought care was making sure my phone was charged, and my tires had air. Elias asked what crisis queen needed saving tonight. I told him not to call me that. He said Nikolai never knew when to compliment a woman who liked a little danger. I heard protection inside that sentence. Not flirtation, I told myself. Not betrayal. Just a man seeing what my husband refused to see. Elias asked about work, but he did not ask for details the way Nikolai did. Nikolai wanted timelines, causes, possible outcomes. Elias wanted the mood. He wanted to know who had crossed me and whether they had apologized. He said a woman like me should never have to explain why she was angry. That felt real. When I got home, the apartment smelled like ginger and rice. Nikolai had kept my plate covered with a small pan lid because he hated when food dried out. He was sitting at the table with his laptop closed. He asked why Omar had mentioned seeing me at the club when I said I had been at the office. Specific, factual, calm. That was worse than suspicion. Suspicion could be mocked. Facts needed handling. I told him Omar probably misunderstood where I had come from. Then I said Elias had asked me to stop by because he wanted advice about a communications issue with his gym investors. The lie grew while I was speaking, and I watched it fit itself around enough truth to stand. Nikolai asked why I had not just said that. I heard control. I heard a small man measuring my movements because he did not know how to hold a woman any other way. That was not what he meant, but my wound was faster than his words. I told him I was tired of reporting simple things like I worked for him. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of his closed laptop. Then he said he was not asking for a report. He was asking why I had hidden something that would have been easy to say. That changed the room. He had named the hidden part, and I had nowhere clean to put it. So I made him the problem. I said he made every normal evening feel like an audit. I said he loved spreadsheets more than conversations. I said if he wanted a quiet wife who came home at 6, he should have married one. He did not answer right away. Nikolai often waited before speaking, and I used to respect that. Now it felt like weakness, dressed as patience. The next morning I told Daria in the agency coffee line. She was wearing red lipstick at 9 in the morning and scrolling through a dating app she claimed she hated. She asked if Elias still looked like trouble with shoulders. I told her that was not the point. She said maybe it was exactly the point. She said marriage should not make a woman feel invisible. She said some men needed pressure because comfort had made them lazy. I carried those sentences all day. At lunch, Lena asked if I wanted to join her and Talia for coffee later. Talia was Nikolai's younger sister, and she used to be warm with me in that easy family way, sending recipes and cheap flight alerts. I said I was busy. Lena watched me for one extra second. She had worked with me long enough to know when I was editing a story before anyone had asked for one. By Friday, Elias had become a place I went in my head. Not because I loved him. Not then. He was proof. Real proof that my anger could pull a man toward me instead of making him go quiet. At Omar's birthday planning brunch, Elias sat beside me instead of beside Nikolai. He reached behind my chair for the sugar and let his hand rest on the wood longer than needed. Omar saw it. Talia saw it. Nikolai saw all of them seeing it. Nobody said anything, and that made the silence feel like a public room opening its doors. Omar's rooftop birthday party happened after rain, when the city still looked wet around the edges. The concrete stairs smelled sharp, like lime wedges, spilled beer, and water trapped under old paint. At the entrance, a woman pressed a red stamp on my wrist, and for no good reason I liked how bright it looked against my skin. The thing is, I arrived already wanting proof. Real proof. Not a talk. Not another careful dinner. Not Nikolai asking what had changed between us with his tired, decent face. I wanted a room full of people to see what I had been trying to explain. Daria came with me from the rideshare and told me my dress looked dangerous in the best way. Elias was already near the bar, laughing with 2 men from Nikolai's university group. Nikolai stood near the railing with Omar, holding my small purse because I had handed it to him while fixing my wrist stamp. One purse, two hands, no complaint. That used to be sweet. That night, it embarrassed me. The rooftop had heat lamps and damp high tables. Music came from a speaker near the bar, a little too loud, making every laugh sound bigger than it was. Omar hugged me and asked where I had been hiding. I told him work had been eating me alive. He glanced at Nikolai before answering, and I did not like that. Talia arrived with her coat still buttoned. She kissed Nikolai's cheek and only touched my shoulder. Small things had started to become messages. Ilias crossed over with 2 drinks and gave one to me without asking what I wanted. Nikolai looked at the glass, then at Elias. It was not jealousy exactly. It was a record being made behind his eyes. Elias told a story about dancing in a rainstorm during a college trip. He made himself the hero, as usual. Everyone laughed because Elias knew how to hold a room. His body turned toward me whenever he reached the best parts. I could feel people feeling that. Someone joked that Elias was the only real man willing to dance in the rain. The words landed lightly, but they opened something in me. The thing is, people think cruelty starts as cruelty. Mine started as a test. I said Elias should maybe show my husband what real confidence looked like. I made my voice playful. I made my smile bright. The kind of smile that tells people they are allowed to laugh. Daria laughed first. A few others followed. Omar did not. Nikolai looked at me across the wet floor. He still had my purse looped over one wrist. The brass apartment key with the red tag was visible in his other hand because he had taken it out with his phone earlier. That key should have stopped me. Instead, I looked at Elias. He lifted his hands as if asking the room if this was allowed. I rolled my eyes and said indirectly that men who needed written permission were usually the ones without courage. The circle laughed again, but thinner this time. Elias stepped close. He gave me one open-handed slap over my dress, staged and quick, the way drunk people do things for a reaction and then hide behind the word joke. It was not the contact that mattered most. It was where it happened. It was who saw it. It was that I laughed while my husband stood 3 steps away, holding my purse. One sound, 2 faces. No way back. For a breath, the rooftop split into groups. The people still smiling. The people pretending not to have seen. The people watching Nikolai. I looked straight at him because I wanted him to move. I wanted him to cross the space, pull me aside, claim the room, raise his voice, show teeth. I wanted him to become the kind of man my mother had taught me to need. He did not. Nikolai placed my purse on a dry chair. Carefully. That almost angered me more than shouting would have. Then he closed his hand around the brass key so tightly the red tag bent against his palm. Talia's mouth changed shape, but she did not speak. Omar put his phone down on the table. Daria lowered hers too, slowly, like she had remembered the recording was not only a game. I said indirectly that this was real masculine energy. I said some men stood in corners holding purses and measuring risk, and some men knew how to make a woman feel alive. The sentence sounded strong while it was leaving my mouth. Then it had to live in the air. Nikolai did not answer in front of them. That was his quiet debrief beginning before the words came. He walked past Elias, past me, and toward the stairwell. I followed because I wanted to win the private part too. The rooftop stairwell was cold and smelled like rain on metal. Music leaked through the door each time someone opened it. Nikolai stood on the landing with the brass key still in his fist. He asked whether I had wanted to hurt him or whether I had needed everyone else to see it. He did not raise his voice. He did not call me names. He did not even look at Elias through the glass when Elias glanced over from the roof door. That made the question harder to dodge. I heard weakness anyway. I heard a man asking me to comfort him after he had failed to be strong. So I told him he was making a harmless party moment into a marriage trial. I said he always did that when he felt exposed. He looked down at the key in his hand. His thumb moved over the bent red tag once. That was the changed object. Home, squeezed into evidence. I saw it, but I did not read it. Not correctly. Omar came down halfway and stopped when he saw us. He said the rideshare entrance was on the lower level if we wanted space. That was all. Neutral. Careful. A witness already choosing his words. On the ride home, Nikolai sat by the window and did not ask Elias to apologize. I kept checking my phone. The tagged location story was already up. In the corner of someone's clip, Elias was close to me and Nikolai was visible behind us. I watched the clip twice. Proof, I told myself. Real proof. For almost 20 minutes, his silence felt like my victory. 4 days later, the apartment smelled like laundry detergent and rice that had gone cold in the pot. Nikolai had started doing things in separate pieces, his shirts in one load, my towels in another. His mug washed and placed on the left side of the drying rack, not beside mine. The thing is, I tried to turn the rooftop into something small because small things can be managed. At work, I told Lena it had been one stupid party joke. I said men only called things disrespectful when they lost control of the room. I leaned against her office door with my arms folded, speaking in my client voice, the one that made messy things sound simple. Lena did not laugh. She asked if Nikolai had known the joke was coming. That question was clean. Too clean. I told her people did not need advance notice for every joke at a birthday party. Then I asked about the campaign calendar, and she let me change the subject. But after that, she stopped stopping by my desk with coffee. One question. 2 quiet afternoons. No invitation. At home, Nikolai was not angry in a way I could use. Anger gives you edges. You can push against it. He folded laundry. He cooked pasta. He answered when I asked where the car keys were. He stopped calling me slow. That nickname disappearing did more damage than any speech, so of course I told myself it was theatrical. One evening he stood by the dining table while I opened takeout containers. He said indirectly that I had used the one thing he trusted me with. His fear of being seen as weak because he was quiet. He said he had told me that shame when we were still new, when he thought marriage meant private things stayed private. His voice was low, not cold, not strategic. Simply sad. That should have reached me. Instead, I made sadness into a tactic. I told myself he was performing pain because he had no stronger move. I said he could not build a whole case against me from one rooftop joke. He said it was not one joke. Then he named the pattern. He named the night at the club. The brunch where Elias touched my chair and I smiled at the wrong person. The dinner where I called Nikolai careful in front of Omar like careful meant weak. The rooftop, the post that other people were already sending around. Accumulation, not incident. That was his S4 voice, though I did not call it that. He was not asking me to agree. He was placing stones on a table one by one until I could not pretend there was no pile. I changed tactics, not remorse, management. I said maybe the rooftop went too far. I said maybe I had been frustrated. I said maybe he had made me feel invisible for so long that the first loud attention felt like air. Some of that was true, and I used the true part badly. He asked what I wanted now. Calm again. I told him I wanted him to understand that women do not become cruel in happy marriages. The sentence sounded smart. It also moved the knife into his hand and asked him to thank me for pointing out the wound. The next evening, we went to Talia's townhouse because she had asked Nikolai to stop by for a box of old family photos. I went because staying home would have looked guilty. Talia's place smelled like lemon cleaner and baked bread. She wore house slippers and did not offer me wine. That was new. At the table, she spoke about Nikolai in a way I hated, not as my husband, as her brother. As a boy who learned early to be useful because their father only praised solved problems. She said he had spent years showing care through work because nobody had taught him how to ask for comfort. I told her that was beautiful, but I needed a husband, not a repair service. Talia looked at me then, not sharply, worse. with the tired face of someone who had stopped arguing. She said indirectly that needing more words from Nikolai was fair. Making him look small in front of his best friend was not. That sentence stayed near me even after we left. Back home, the dining room was dim because one bulb had burned out. Nikolai reached for the brass apartment key on the hook by the door. The red tag was still bent from the rooftop. He held it for a second. Then he did not hang it back. He placed it on the dining table. Metal on wood. Small sound. Flat. That was the door opening. For one slow minute, I saw the shape of what I had done without the language I usually wrapped around it. The key was not a symbol to him. It was a habit. Home in his pocket. Home on the hook. Home shared without needing to be announced. I had taken the quietest part of him and made it public entertainment. Not because he had done nothing for me. Because he had done the wrong kind of things. Because his care did not look like the protection I had been trained to recognize. The room held still around that thought. I almost saw him. Then my phone lit up with Daria's name from an old message thread, and I chose the smaller door. I texted her that Nikolai was performing sadness because he could not handle a strong woman. I added that I refused to apologize for wanting something real. Proof. Real. Strong. The words looked better on the screen than they sounded in the room. Daria did not answer for 3 hours. That night, Nikolai took a pillow from our bed and walked to the guest room. He did not slam the door. He closed it with one hand, quietly. The empty key hook by the door looked cleaner than the rest of the apartment. The wine bar near the river had narrow tables and candles in glass cups. Rain tapped against the front window, and every passing car pulled light across the walls. Elias chose the table farthest from the door, which I told myself was romantic even though he kept checking who came in. The thing is, by then I was not chasing desire. I was chasing proof. Real proof that the story was mine before other people made it theirs. Elias looked different outside the rooftop crowd. Not smaller exactly, but less available. His phone stayed face up beside his glass. Each time it buzzed, his eyes moved before his hand did. He asked what I had told Nikolai. I told him enough. He said indirectly that this was getting messy and that his name did not need to be pulled into a marriage problem. A marriage problem. That phrase made me sit back. I had made him proof of real masculine force in my head, and he was now speaking like a man checking exits. His Agenda B was right there, though I did not have that name for it. Elias was not trying to win me. He was trying to manage exposure. I said he had not worried about being involved when everyone was laughing. He said the party was one thing and posts were another. Posts. That was when I knew he had seen the private friend story I had not yet made. The thought had been sitting in me all day. If people were already whispering, I needed to speak first. That was my work brain. My wound liked it because it sounded like control. After Elias went to the restroom, I opened my phone. The rooftop clip was still saved in my messages from a mutual friend. It was short and poorly framed. Elias close to me. The staged slap. My laugh. Nikolai behind us holding my purse, his face too quiet. I cropped it so the worst of my own face was hidden and the meaning leaned where I wanted it. Then I posted it to a private friend story with a caption that made Nikolai the lesson. I wrote that some husbands needed to learn the difference between being married and being a real man. 1 clip, 2 taps. No taking it back. When Elias returned, I turned the phone face down. He saw the movement anyway. He asked what I had done. I told him I had told the truth before people twisted it. He looked at me for a long second, then said, I should not have posted anything with his face visible. Not because it hurt Nikolai. Not because it crossed a line. Because his face was visible. That should have shown me who he was protecting. I paid for my own drink and left before he finished his. Omar screenshotted the story within minutes. I did not know that yet, but I knew people were watching because the view count rose too fast. Names appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Daria's name did not. When I got home, Nikolai was sitting in the apartment hallway, not inside the living room. The brass key lay on the floor beside him, red tag turned upward. He had not changed out of his work shirt. His sleeves were rolled once unevenly, like he had stopped halfway through an ordinary action and decided ordinary was no longer available. The hallway smelled like dust from the heater. He looked at my phone in my hand and asked if posting it had made me feel safer. That was too close to the real thing, so I gave him the one true accusation I had left. I told him he loved me by fixing things, then punished me for needing words. He did not deny it. That silence had a different shape from the others. It was not avoidance. It was agreement he could not defend himself from. He said, indirectly, that I had deserved words. He said I had deserved a husband who could say desire before it turned into repair, hurt before it turned into a spreadsheet, fear before it became distance. For one breath, there he was, meeting the real complaint. Then he said I had not deserved to turn his private shame into public proof. The sentence sat between us with the key on the floor. He gave his final offer cleanly. He said if I could name what I did without making it his fault, we could decide what remained. Not fix, not forgive, decide. The thing is, a clean offer can feel like a trap when you have built your whole defense around fog. I refused through height, through voice, through the version of myself that always knew how to sound more certain than she was. I told him he was asking me to apologize for wanting a real husband. I said he was calm because calm was the only power left to men who could not fight for anything. Nikolai picked up the key. He did not put it in his pocket. He placed it on the small hallway table and stood. He said he would handle things properly. No threat. No named papers. No court words. No raised voice. The calm did more than anger would have. Anger would have meant he was still inside the argument with me. This was logistics. This was inventory. This was someone closing drawers. I followed him into the apartment because I wanted another round. He did not give me one. He walked to the guest room and began moving work folders into a cardboard box. I asked what he was doing. He said he needed his files in one place. That was the silent decision marker becoming practical. Records, order, dates, objects grouped by use. I told myself he was being dramatic. Then I texted Daria. First message, I need you. Second message, he is acting like one party post is a crime. Third message, Elias is being weird now. All three stayed unread, small on the page, huge in the room. The absence where she used to be made me angrier than any lecture from her would have. Daria had laughed at the early jokes. Daria had called me alive. Daria had told me some men needed pressure. Now, when pressure had opened a crack under my feet, she was not even typing. Elias replied 40 minutes later. His message was short, careful, and clean enough to show someone else if needed. He said I should remove the clip because his face was visible and because he did not consent to being part of my marital conflict. My marital conflict. There it was again. Not our heat. Not our connection. My problem. Nikolai came out of the guest room with a stack of folders. He did not look at my phone. He did not ask who had written. He put the folders on the dining table beside the brass key. I said he was enjoying this new victim role. He said nothing. That was the peak of it, though no one watching would have known. No shouting, no door slam, no dramatic line. Just my husband moving paper from one room to another while I became louder beside him. The thing I believed was strength had started turning around in my hand. Public proof. Real proof. Proof I could make other people see. Now every person connected to that proof was protecting themselves from me. Nikolai closed the guest room door softly, and the apartment finally sounded like a place with two separate lives inside it. The following Monday, I walked into the glass lobby of my PR agency with a client folder under one arm and my phone in my hand. The air smelled like floor polish and the bitter coffee from reception. The doors reflected my face twice, so I checked which version looked calmer. A man near the front desk asked for Sloane Mercer by my full legal name. Lena was standing near reception with a tablet. Two junior staff members looked up, then looked away too quickly. The man handed me an envelope and asked me to confirm my name. I signed on a small screen with my finger. The signature came out crooked. I held the envelope against the folder as if both belonged to the same meeting. Inside was a petition for dissolution of marriage and a motion for temporary financial and property orders. The first temporary orders hearing date was listed at family court. The motion requested temporary exclusive use of the apartment for Nikolai, preservation of joint funds, and limits on unusual spending from shared accounts. I pressed my thumb against the reception desk edge until the skin turned pale. The evidence section did not bring some hidden secret from nowhere. It used what I had made visible: the rooftop video, the private story post, the caption about a real man, witness statements from Omar and Talia, notes about the pattern of using my husband's private insecurity as public entertainment. I told Lena, indirectly, that Nikolai was punishing me for one stupid party joke. Lena looked at the envelope, then at me. She asked if the clip was real. That was all. Not cruel, not kind. Just the question my version could not survive. Before I could call Elias, a written statement came through his attorney. He said I had encouraged the rooftop act, posted the video without his consent, and involved him in a marriage dispute he wanted no part of. Then he removed every tagged photo of us from the last month, and Nora blocked me before I could write. I moved into a short-term furnished sublet above a dry cleaner because the apartment became part of the temporary order request. My personal card started carrying the dinners, ride shares, and hotel charges I used to blur inside shared spending. Omar stopped inviting me, Talia removed me from the family photo album, and Lena spoke to me only about work. Elias gave his protective statement, deleted the photos, and let Nora answer the door when I went there once. The agency moved me off a major crisis account because the strategist could not become the story clients whispered about. The thing is, I thought public proof would protect me. I thought if everyone saw another man take the space my husband left quiet, I would stop feeling small. I thought real strength had to be loud enough to embarrass somebody. But Nikolai's quietness had been carrying more than I knew. One key, two signatures, no home. The brass key with the red tag came back in a plain envelope, without a note. I got the proof I asked for, and it proved the wrong person.